Hello, and welcome to the second episode of a gaming conversation with friends. This started out as a trial show, and it went that well last time that we all agreed that we should do it once a fortnight. So, with Removable and VJ, and this time we've got special guest and friend Luke Steele on the show. How are you doing, Luke?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Had a nice sprightly time of 9 p.m. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Yep, 6 minutes past. I can't.
You say that.
I can't be on time. I can't be on time. It's just a thing. It is. Welcome, Masuku in the chat. VJ, QLEDs, Dablu1. Thanks for popping in, and welcome from RemovableSanity.
Hello.
Coming back on.
Well, you did offer cookies, and I can't resist a good cookie, so there we go.
VJ, have you got a cup of tea ready?
Not yet, but I will have one shortly.
What time is it there now?
It's just gone 2 p.m.
Oh, afternoon then. Yeah,
Time for dinner.
Thanks for the correction. I didn't know the American time had changed to 5 p.m. EST. I didn't realise that. I didn't. I was advertising 4, and you said no, it's 5. It is. I didn't know. I didn't.
You can tell that Stubbs works for the CMA.
Yeah. Apparently, I'm a global regulator defender or whatever.
Dun, dun, dun.
Luke's making notes.
Yeah, Luke's got a lot to learn. He has.
It's true. It's true. What he doesn't know about the CMA can easily be found on Twitter by someone in their basement. It's just all you need to do is just go on Twitter, find someone who knows more than you, and bam, sorted.
Exactly. But no, we can have a talk about what's going on with the ABK deal. What is going on, Luke?
Do we have to?
No, we won't mention it for long. Is there much going on at the minute, Luke, or we're just waiting for decisions, or to-ing and fro-ing with the comments from Sony and Microsoft and CMA?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, not much is happening, really. We've, I guess, from a CMA EU standpoint, we're waiting until towards the end of April. Which is when they'll publish their final reports, basically, and they're very close together.
Ask that question. Will that be the final report to say if the CMA go, that's it, we want to block, or is that not? Is that it? Is it a yes or no?
That's it. Yeah. So the final report basically says here's we investigated across 2 phases, right, which is what the CMA have done. We proposed at the end of phase 2 that we think there are competition issues, and therefore these are the remedies that we want. And if you don't give us those, we'll block. Basically, that's the only alternative at that point. So there's not really anything extra that goes on beyond that, unless Microsoft can come to some sort of targeted, remedy conclusion, but they'll already be starting that kind of probably towards the end of this month, I guess.
Okay. I've got a question for you, obviously. I think VJ wants to know about it. With regards to how the CMA regard the case, or was it VJ wanted to know if they have to actually prove physical proof that it harms competition? Is that what you were asking when you asked me the other day? Can you remember, VJ, or not?
Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly what I asked. I think I was asking the fact that I wasn't really sure what the CM exactly does, and whether they carried the burden of proof that this is the outcome that we project, and then they had to back it up. Yeah. But I think Luke kind of answered that in the to you, and then you told me. So I'll let Luke explain it, but I got the gist of what he was saying.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a difficult one because I guess like a regulator's, a competition regulator's job is, you know, to analyze a particular merger, if it falls within their remit to do so, and to make assessments really on the future of the markets like it's identified. And in particular, it has to analyze, you know, what will the market be like if this merger doesn't happen, which is called the counterfactual, and what will it be like if it does happen and we let it through with, say, no barrier, right? The parties can just do what they want. And when they're doing that in the second phase, which is where the CMA have got to, the proof, the burden of proof, as it were, on the regulator is to say, on the balance of probabilities, is it more likely than not that this merger will give rise to a substantial lessening of competition? So it's a majority percentage, effectively. Now, obviously, that involves a lot of, to some extent, crystal ball gazing, because they don't know, right? Just some, like me and you don't know. None of us know where the market will be in 5-10 years, really. We can make informed estimations of it, but we don't actually know. And that's the same process the CMA is doing, except obviously the one difference is that the CMA have access to, you know, hundreds of thousands of documents, internal emails, correspondence, etc., between the parties that can give them maybe some broader inclination and observation about what's happening to the market, where it's going, what the conduct of the parties would be. So that's kind of the
would
proof.
Would they look at I was just going to say, it's a bit ironic, the CMA seemingly against the merger and wants to see it cut up or divest, or certain aspects of it divested in order for it to go through. I was speaking to Stubbs about it, and I said, you do know, like, I mean, I think it was during the Roman occupation. I did Roman history at school, and that sort of curated monopolies, right? I can't remember back in the when they occupied Britain, and then England were actually the country that I think actually probably completely polished the whole process off. And like during the 17 and 1800s, you know, England were, you know, were known for, you know, how can I put it, handing out monopolies. I think it was for coal, iron, wood, sugar, I think bricks, and even mouse traps, right? That kind of personified the process. And so I think if you're in that kind of government organization, or is it an independent organization? I'm not sure. That you'd have to educate me on that. But I'm sure that those kind of events are kind of within their education, right? If they're in this kind of industry, and then you don't have to go that far back, right? You only have to look back. And I was telling Stubbs this. I said you only have to go back to like 95 when Microsoft put Netscape out of business, and then I think it was like, I don't know, I think Netscape, before they went out of business, got the DOJ, is it, Department of Justice, and about 20 states to sue. Well, they all got to come together and sued Microsoft, right? And a lot of this is still fresh in the minds, I'm sure. I don't know how old the people are over at CMA, but people have long memories, right? So the reason why I'm kind of mentioning this is that I think that CMA, just from my sort of narrow viewpoint, is the fact that they've got history to contend with, form to contend with, depending on who the corporation is that's doing the acquisition, and the fact that back during the 2000s, the UK on any given major release was up to 50% market share of the European countries, and the main countries at that point were, what was it, England, France, Italy, Germany, and Spain. So and now it's probably around 30 to 35 on a given release. So I can understand why they have to take it very seriously. I mean, if they were only like 5 or 10% of the market, right, it's like not a material figure. So I just saw them getting a bit of heat, and I was wondering why. But I guess I know why. But people don't really look at history when or current form of companies, right? How they act in general, especially Microsoft, right? They've created a lot of these wrinkles, which they've been sort of taken to task for legally. But they've grown a lot smarter, right, in terms of how they maneuver around sort of legalities. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think the CMA's got a tough job, but the burden does rest with them because, like you said, it's not just about the merger. It's about what effect does it have on the economy? What effect does it have on the publisher? What effect does it have on jobs going forward, right? And it's not. I don't think it's just about what effect it has on Sony, and whether they have a credible reason or reasoning or reasons as to why it shouldn't go through. It probably has a bearing, but not quite as much as what people are shouting and screaming about on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the ultimate barometer for the CMA is what impact does this have on consumers, and the impact it has on consumers, at least from a CMA perspective, is measured by reference to rivalry, on the understanding that competition is all about rivalry, right, in a market, and that's what drives value for consumers, and that's what's good for consumers. So the CMA's assessments are, okay, well, if the merger happens and we just let it slide, what does this do to the rivalry, not just now, but in the future? And what impact does that ultimately have on consumers? So that's, I guess, the crystal ball, Mystic Meg element of it all, which is trying to see what happens to that rivalry. Is it good for rivalry? Is it not? And I think it's totally fine to agree or disagree with the CMA's analysis of this merger, right? Because I don't necessarily agree with the conclusions that the CMA have got to at this point. But I think sometimes there's a bit of vitriol about, the impact or the influence Sony have on the process. And obviously they're very relevant to the process because they're the predominant rival of Microsoft in the markets identified by the CMA and by other regulators. But, the CMA conducts really thorough substantive analysis about a given merger, and of course they take into account third-party considerations like Sony's, but it's only a very small part of their analysis, and the weight that they put on those submissions, for example, is quite low, because of course it is, because they know that a rival is going to be opposed to a merger that might impact its position in a given market, that might swing it from being number one or to number two. Not that I think that would happen here, but that's the kind of thing that a third party might say. So, it's a really difficult job. It's not an easy job. It takes a long time to analyze all this documentation, this kind of barrage of information that these regulators are given, and they have to make assessments of their own accord and come to a conclusion. It's not necessarily the right conclusion for some, but on the other hand, they have access to far more information and documents than we'll ever have access to. So, it is what it is. I think people just get angry about it in general, because obviously they have favorability one way or another about the deal, whether they want it to go through or not.
Everybody has a bias, right? Everybody has a bias,
yeah, of course.
A desire, a bitterness, and it's also really quite self-indulgent, right? None of it is practical or pragmatic or observant, right? And it's just, I just see people just saying, I need this deal to get done because it will gratify me, and that's the truth, right? But they'll sort of decorate that with lovely language and saying this is an injustice when really I said to Stubbs, I said, we really have to discuss this because it's actually got absolutely nothing to do with us, right? And we know so little, and really in 50 years' time, who's going to care?
I mean, for sure. Look, I think that's the way I've always approached talking about it and coming to it, is that which do I care one way or another? Not particularly. Which way would I like it to go? I guess I'd like Microsoft to make the purchase just because it will have an impact on Game Pass and I'm a subscriber of that. But if that never happened, I really couldn't care. I'm not emotionally invested in it at all. And all I've ever tried to do really is just say, okay, look, this is like the rare occasion where there's a confluence of, something I have a really passionate hobby about, which is gaming and the gaming industry, and what I do for a living, which is, mergers and acquisitions law. So it's nice to be able to talk about it and, have a kind of meeting of those two things and just apply, knowledge to that. But I think the thing that I've always tried to do is just to say, this is the situation as it is. These are the facts. I'm not trying to weight it in favor of Sony or Microsoft or for or against the merger. I'm just trying to explain the position that everybody finds themselves in and what I think reasonably might happen, albeit I can't predict what a regulator will do, because even Microsoft's lawyers, Sony's lawyers, they will not be able to predict what the CMA and the EU are going to do. It's out of your control in that situation to some extent. I mean, you can submit all your documents and your arguments and your submissions, and do all that, but you that's it, right? You can't slip them a copy of God of War Ragnarok on PlayStation 5.
I've got a question for you on this, and you may just say, VJ, it's just all part of an unprofessional circus, but if like you have like senior VPs, I don't know who they are, right? And I saw something. Forgive me, I shouldn't really be on Twitter at all. It's just that I have to sometimes to talk about Wulong with removable and stuff, and the lack of Wulong with stubs, and then you've seen like certain sort of Microsoft or Xbox taking out newspaper ads and so on and so forth, or a VP from Activision saying XYZ and Kochek, speaking on CNN or whatever here in the US. Is it, if this has no bearing, no influence, right? But is it for me, it seems to be just designed to sort of propagate and elicit support and an outrage, from weak-minded or ill-informed or feeble-minded or, like you say, emotionally dim-witted twats on Twitter, which is the vast majority of them, right? There's nothing wrong with Twitter, right, itself. It's just the people that inhabit it. But so what is the point of all of that if it would have no bearing, on the findings and the deliverables from CMA and these other and the European, whatever the European equivalent is called?
Yeah, I mean the impact is twofold to some extent. So or rather the motivation is twofold. The first one is that the regulators ultimately are still made up of people, right? So anything that you can do in a public sphere or in a press sphere to try and espouse, the benefits of this deal or the negatives or whatever is beneficial, because ultimately regulators are people and people can be influenced, and they may go into things, with a different mindset, having heard arguments or seen things or seen favorability for the deal, for example, if you're Microsoft, and kind of adjacent to that is the idea of building broader public support for something, as Microsoft have been trying to do, with the FT ads, for example.
Is that also why Microsoft built a website about it? Is that why? Because
exactly.
Is that normal in other industries?
That's not normal. No, that's not normal.
Okay.
It's it's quite unique to this deal. I've certainly never seen it before.
Okay.
But it's all to try and build support for from regulators and customers and the public at large for the deal. So that's the first one, the first kind of impetus for doing that. And then the second one is more broadly commercial, which is that Activision, Microsoft still have, trading shares on a market. They can't come out and say, you know what, actually we're not sure about this, or we think this, it's a bit touch and go here. They have to project confidence, and they have to project favorability in terms of, saying, oh yeah, this is really good for everybody, right? Because ultimately this still has a bottom line impact on share value and market cap and all that sort of stuff. So That's basically the rationale. And it's not to say, like I said on the first one, it's not to say that regulators can never be influenced by people or by, a party, because of course they can, because ultimately they're hearing lots of conflicting information from different interested, companies in this. But the more you do it, I mean, the more you try and push it as something that's favorable, the more likely, I guess, it is that, someone at the CMA and people who are analyzing this might be influenced by some of the arguments you're making to the public as well. So that's the reason, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think he's kind of answered all my questions, Mr. Stubbs. Just my curiosity more than anything, right? Is that even though it's these committees and it's not like a jury, right? On a trial where they're kind of like like you cannot read any, you have to stay in a hotel and all that sort of stuff, and you can't be influenced, and if you are, you're going to be replaced. So, and I think last year, I can't remember when it was announced. Was it February or March that Microsoft came out and said, "Look, we've agreed a deal. We're going to pursue this purchase." And at the time, my thoughts immediately went to, this is kind of like a little bit over the top, right? Because there's none of the Microsoft studios, game studios, exactly purring at the moment. They may do in 12, 24, 36 months. And this seems like for them it's a major move to buy beachfront property basically and own the lot of it, and be able to hold a gun to everybody else, because they haven't managed to create anything significant or material over 25 years to compete with Sony and Nintendo, who have contributed a lot to the industry. And I say that because Sony and Nintendo and anyone else, aside from Microsoft, have to sort of measure risk and the current situation carefully and calculate their way forward with consideration and severe responsibility. Microsoft, on the other hand, can afford a grand design regardless of time and money and quality. And I'm kind of referring to that TV home improvement show I used to watch back in England. And for Microsoft, they just have a level of how can I put it, acute power, resource and influence, right? As Luke's just talked about, right? Taking out full page added. I actually thought that was a joke, and I thought, no, it can't be.
I found it a bit of a weird place to put it in the FT.
I thought that was a joke. You just said that. Okay. All right. Wow.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of a strange place to put it in the FT. I mean, it's not as if the Financial Times readers are really hardcore gamers en masse.
But
got
it
a
shows
word
you
for that desperation.
That they can, with the resources that they've got, and it's a price of commercial greed. Let's be honest, right? Is to do whatever they want to a mesmerizing degree with impunity and without liability. And as I said to you, they've got a lot smarter since '95, and it was only because President Bush came in 2001, when Microsoft at that time were told to divvy up the company and sell it. If it was only because Bush came in 2001 and there was an appeal when he overturned it. Otherwise, Microsoft would have been a very different company now, perhaps, right? And I think Sony's approach to all of this, for me, is like, okay, you know what? You gotta, if you're a pragmatic, which I think Jim Ryan is, for all the stick he gets, because I don't know why he gets it, because most 99% of the people on Twitter don't even know the guy. So he's doing what he needs to do. And I think for them, it's a case of, look, the best case is let's assume it's going through, and let's just delay it as much as possible. And in the meantime, figure out what we're going to do. But I think I said back in 2018, they had some meeting, and they knew back then that their business was reliant on the 10 games to bring in about 50% of their revenues, and none of them were first party. So for them, and I think it was you, Stubbs, isn't it? I didn't know, but I think a few weeks back, and I said, you know what? I think this is probably about $1 billion worth of. This is what this comes down to, right, for Sony or Activision. And it was only a few days ago, right, that the numbers came out in the public domain. It's about $1 billion. So and Sony have just got to figure out how to deal with that. And it's not like they haven't dealt with adversity. They were on the brink of oblivion back in 2013, and just to sort of even the odds out a little bit, it's not that different to what Sony ended up falling out with Nintendo, and that Cold War still exists when they took Final Fantasy VII away. Well, it was Square's decision, but Nintendo stopped working with them at that time. And then Dragon Quest VII as well, which had historically been on the Nintendo systems, came out on the PlayStation, and I think it did like 4 or 5 million, in the first day or week at launch. So it's Sony have done it to Nintendo, and I guess it might be time for Microsoft to do it to Sony. So, and obviously the world was a really different place 30 odd years ago, but you can see how sometimes, well, you say nature takes its course, but business takes its course, right, over periods of time. So it'll be really interesting to see how Sony reinvent themselves yet again. But Nintendo and as I say, Nintendo and Sony have always been very good at that, right? And like Luke said, even if this deal goes through, no one knows how the industry is going to look in 5 years' time and what will be super popular then.
Exactly. I'll just do a few shout outs because a load of people came in. UK Dazarus, welcome. Paul AFC, welcome. And Indie Gamer, hopefully your power comes back soon. Try and save your battery, mate. Also, we've had a graphic god in. Welcome, thanks for popping by. UK Lad, thanks for stopping in, mate. Yeah, I've got one vital question, though. Judzilla as well, welcome. Luke, I've seen this on Twitter. Can the UK Prime Minister overturn the CMA?
Yes. I mean, maybe in some multiverse, yes, you can. Not this one, though.
I couldn't believe it when I seen that. I thought that's the farthest reaching stretch I've seen so far. That is.
Yeah.
No, but I think isn't the health minister here, Ken?
No. No. The answer to all of that is no.
You're telling me Bob from down the road can't either? This is just absolutely outrageous.
I know. It's disgraceful, isn't it? I think that some of these things get propagated sometimes, and they start off with someone saying them, and then somehow that's fact. Like it actually applies.
When somebody with a big account says it, they all believe it, but the person ain't got no knowledge,
Yeah, and there's plenty of those people around on Twitter at the moment. Either, they're people just really invested in the deal, so they're reading a lot about it, which is great because they're learning. But of course, they don't actually have any proper knowledge, so they're going off purely the information they digest in front of them. Or there are people who have, mild expertise in a particular area, which isn't this, but they think it's similar to this, so that they then have some authority to talk about it. Or they're just, plucking stuff out of thin air and thinking, that could be a solution.
I think Luke's being considerably polite there by saying people are learning, because people don't learn.
No, that's true. I mean, they don't. Sometimes
because people have a belief, right? And when you have a belief, beliefs are really dangerous things, right? And and unfortunately, no matter what somebody else has to say, when you have a belief, you're not open-minded, right? You're not open to anything, really. You're kind of like you've dug yourself out a trench, and you're staying in there, right? And people will find. I mean, I'm only by what Stubbs has told me that you've been on a few shows, and no matter, it doesn't matter how much you may not be right, you may not, they may not agree with you, but like you mentioned the word vitriol. My English is falling down the pan today. I just haven't had a tea. I will get a tea in a minute, and I'll be back on form. And but I still see that they're still trying to get that nail in the coffin, but they can't seem to hit the head of the nail. But except they're doing so to their fingers and thumbs, and to the point where it's comical, right? And that's why I assume we got a laugh out of Stubbs earlier when he asked you a question.
I think the problem is that people go into this with a bias, which is totally fine. I've got no problem with that. I only have a problem with that when they go into it with a confirmation bias mindset, which is to say, here is some information that's been presented in front of me that is, for all extents and purposes, very reliable, informed information, but I'm going to disregard that because I don't like it, and I'm going to try and pick holes in it. That's kind of the issue that I have, because it doesn't help all the discourse around this deal, right? Because I think it's cool that people are talking about it, but when you see people who are doing shows every week about some minor incidental thing that's happened, and and a friendly pest, exactly, it's just total confirmation bias, which is not very helpful, because you can't have a debate with people, and we don't even need to have a debate on some of this, because some of it just is what it is, right? Like it's a legal process. There are certain defined steps, and there are certain likely outcomes depending on where you are. Microsoft and Sony's lawyers aren't sat there having a debate about this. They're kind of moving the process along and seeing where they can get to.
So there's no real mediation going on, right?
No, exactly. Like they're just doing what they're paid to do.
Yeah.
And Sony and Microsoft themselves are saying things that they would always say in this situation, because they are looking out for the best interests of the company as a whole by reference to its shareholders. Like that's the duty of directors in these companies. So I get that people don't like some of the stuff that Sony says sometimes. I think some of it's a bit laughable myself, but like I don't see what the alternative is, really. Like I don't understand what people expect. And I can tell you that if I was a lawyer acting for Sony, I would absolutely tell them to say those things as well. And likewise, if I was acting for Microsoft, I'd tell them to poke holes in it. It's just what they're going to do. So, it
doesn't matter what they. It doesn't matter what they say, Luke, because everyone reads and defines it in their own way, right? And like you said, a lot of it's confirmation bias, right? And then how to use that to either praise your side or castigate the other side, right? And that's all it is, and that's what I stay out of it, because it's nothing to do with the deal. It just shows you the moral fiber or the lack of the people that exist on the planet today, which is surely a blight, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is with it. People are going to have that response to it, I think, or some people anyway, and they're going to have
even intelligent people can be feeble of mind, right, and malleable, right?
I've seen lots of those.
These two observations are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I don't mean that. There are lots of intelligent people who have had input on this deal in terms of the discourse, but again, some of them approach it from a confirmation bias perspective, and try and manipulate the information out there, or try and manipulate what they're saying to favor it or be against it. And I just think it's like, you don't have any impact on it, so I don't see why you're going to the lengths. I think the only valuable information in this is the information we get about what developments are happening and the information about the process. I think that's it. Right, because it's not about a game.
But it's, look, I don't know how the game is really. Well, I do, but to how it's played, like you're saying, even people in senior positions or seniority that should know better, it seems that at the moment, and this is why I just refrain from getting involved in it at all costs, other than today because you're on the show. It just seems that people are just being solicited. I don't know if it is the word fealty and allegiance. I don't know if that's the right word, but and they're trying to garner as much support from the ignorant public, right, to promote, like you said, their own sort of allegiance and their preferred outcome, and propelling a bias, right? With, I don't know what these ads say in the UK and so on and so forth, but it's but they're all just claims, right, at the end of the day, right? So I'm just be interesting actually, I think, sorry, to speak to your point earlier, no one can actually tell you what the outcome is, because ultimately we don't know the individuals who are involved who make up the process of defining or making the decisions or the proposals, because we have no idea what their actual capacity is, right, of coming to a sensible outcome.
Yeah, pretty much. It's been interesting. I'll put it that way. And I think everybody will be happy when it's done. You know, one way or another. I think that will pretty much wrap it up for people. I think the problem has been that it's been quite a protracted process, which is was somewhat expected.
Yeah.
But people are kind of getting fatigued with it. Some more than others, but also it's kind of, the longer it drags on, the more susceptible to madness people are about it, you know, to kind of really intense emotional reactions. And that's kind of the stage we're at now, where everybody's, you know, not everybody, but communities are getting quite feverish about this. Gaming communities, Xbox, PlayStation, etc. So they're, you know, the things that they're talking about and the things that they're saying are quite quite manic in some ways. So I think everybody would probably be happier when we're done. You know, certainly I will. That will be great. Then my work, you know, and my stuff can just go into obscurity again until the next one, which would be nice. But yeah, it's been really interesting.
It definitely has. It has. This ABK. It's well, it'll all be over soon. Either way, a friendly pest. Welcome, and actually, Luke is a VR guy, so trust him as well. Okay,
Yes,
really
there
trust
you go, yeah.
people. PR users, for example. See, Luke's a VR guy. He's got the new PS VR.
Yeah, not quite the VR guy of Friendly Pest, but maybe one day.
I think we need Removable to tie up this topic, all the loose ends, and into a neatly wrapped bow for us before we move on to Wulong.
Oh God, no! Just
well, you can kick us off.
Don't abstain now. Come on.
Do you know, Josh? I don't give a Tommy two tits about it, Josh. I really don't. It was great for possibly, I don't know, the first month, and now it's just, as Luke said, it's just getting my nerves now. It's like, it's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing that's anything you're gonna say is going to influence in any shape or form. I mean, there are more important things in the world to be really, really involved and, you know, enthralled by. I don't know, the games, maybe the actual games you can play right now, you could be really enthralled by. You know,
exactly. At the minute, I'm making my mission now. I want indie gaming to be proud of me. I'm making it my mission to try and complete Hollow Knight. It's my mission now. I was playing it last night. And have you completed Hollow Knight, Luke?
Yes, I have. That's.
I can't believe he just insulted you, Luke.
That was the prerequisite for ever going on. You know,
that's Q-ludes. Yeah. Getting their facts mixed up. I have completed Hollow Knight.
I think he got it mixed up listening to the podcast last night.
I even have the collector's edition of that game, which the physical collector's edition, which came with like a little encased Hollow Knight.
Well, we'll have to check if Indie Gamer got this.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't. He hasn't.
He's not really a fan, though, is he? He's just more of a
really,
you know,
he's just he's a bandwagoner.
Yeah, exactly. Jumps on now and then just to, you know, get those clicks.
But no, I'm going to try more to get through Hollow Knight, because it is a hard game. It is, but I will try.
So have you got past tutorial yet?
About an hour in.
He's coming up to the Moss Charger.
I'm an hour in, but that probably don't. That's not.
That was the tutorial.
Hour, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'll schedule a check-in at 2057, and we'll see how far
it's about right.
You've got to.
Well, it's a race. 2057 is a race between Stubbs completing the game and Silksong coming out at the moment.
Well, we'll be on Hollow Knight 8 by then, won't we?
Hollow Knight, Silksong will be out this year or next year. I think it'll be this year sometime. But there were certain people trying to suggest dates in Indie Gamers chat last night, and I don't believe them because Team Cherry are very, from what Indie Gamer said, and he spoke to the guy from Team Cherry, the promotional guy that came on his podcast. They're very tight-lipped, so they probably wouldn't even tell Xbox when they thought it was going to. Obviously, but they probably said because they were at that show, that 12-month show, they probably said, "Well, we're going to try and get it out within the next 12 months." They probably didn't give them a natural, because one thing people missed about that 12-month show was the fact that a big, small writing was placed under it saying a targeted 12-month window. So that was their get-out clause for nearly every game on the show. It was. So, because we live in the era of delays now, it's just one of them things. I would rather a game get delayed than it be a complete mess, to be honest.
No, I just want them all to be Cyberpunk.
Oh, no.
Did you do the Grim Troop DLC as well, Luke?
No, I didn't. I finished the base game basically, but I didn't.
Again, not really a real true fanboy.
I know. Look, I'm gonna give you a revelation. I love Hollow Knight. I don't think it's the best thing ever. But
oh dear, that's you cancelled, mate. I'm sorry, that's it.
I don't have Indies love for it.
Gamer tuned into this part.
That's it. Yeah,
I love it, but would I
never will be on the show again.
I think if you that's it now. I'm out as a co-host.
In that category of games, though, Luke.
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't had so much fun with a game like that since Alex Kidd on the Mega Drive. But for you, in that sort of realm or vicinity of games, or that catch-alls, what other games would you recommend? Please don't tell me it's going to be Will-O-the-Wisp or whatever it's called on the Ori or whatever.
Oh, in terms of Metroidvanias,
that came up last night, actually.
Yeah. If you go check out the Indie podcast, because we talked for 2 hours about Metroidvanias actually. But I guess I probably would say, funnily enough, Ori and Will-O-the-Wisps are kind of. I don't know if they're at that level. But I think some people would agree with that statement, and some people would disagree. It's all very subjective, isn't it? But
yeah.
They're very good, but just even, I mean, Symphony of the Night's probably the best Metroidvania ever made. So I don't know if Hollow Knight gets to that level, but there's a lot. I think the thing is, for me, like, Hollow Knight is probably one of the best Metroidvanias ever made, but that's not to say I think it's one of my favorite games ever. Right, because there's a difference between the two.
Yep.
I can recognize and really love the game, which I do, but I don't. I'll use the game I always use, and I've got a couple of these. But like the Outer Wilds, for example, not a Metroidvania, but I think about that game like every other day. I think about it in some capacity. I completed it years ago, back in 2019. That's a special game for me. I think for like Indie, for example, Hollow Knight is that, right? That's his Outer Wilds, but it's not mine. Mine's Outer Wilds, So I think like it's just a subjective preference thing.
Outer Wilds is like is that an adventure game? Is it or?
Yeah, it's quite a hard game to categorize actually, because I think it's quite unique compared to almost anything out there. But it's effectively an adventure game, a first-person exploration adventure, with a lot of different mechanics and one of the best stories I think there's ever been in any game, quite easily. And I think that game does things that very few games are willing to risk. It does not handhold the player at all. It does not lead you down a path. It says basically you're in this world. There is a thing that's happening, which is that every 22 minutes, the sun in this small universe that you inhabit goes supernova, and your task is go figure it out. Go figure that out, and you can complete the game. Like, it has an ending. You can finish it. It does not tell you at any point how to do that. You just figure it out. And I absolutely adored that it's the complete antithesis to what Ubisoft games or anything like that. It's truly unique. So and it's a very powerful, emotionally resonant message to the game that I found very, very engrossing. So, like I said, I always think about it. But that's kind of my Hollow Knight.
I think with Hollow Knight, it just caught me off guard, and it was only because Indy insisted on it, and then he kind of handcuffed me to himself, so to make sure I got through it. And then and I can't remember how long ago I played it, but about 6 months prior, a friend of mine, his daughter, she's about 14 or 15, had a Switch, and she said, "Oh, I've completed it," right? And I don't know that many female gamers, right? And it was like, okay, so what did you like about it, and so on and so forth. And she just said everything. And I thought, okay. And at that time, I thought, oh, it's a Nintendo Switch game, probably basic visuals. I'm too busy playing Final Fantasy and all this other stuff, or Dragon Quest or whatever. And then Indy got me onto it, and I just think it'd been, well, you can see, right, my reference to the last time I played a game like that was Alex Kidd, right? So I played the Castlevania games as well. So I just it's like that, right? That game, and probably there's probably a couple of others that I think about, but Hollow Knight is one of the ones that I think about quite a lot, because it also, when I started playing it, I'm probably a bit older than you now, Luke. Is that I thought, oh my goodness, have I still got the reflexes or the focus to really conquer this game? And a few bosses that were straightforward. That was interesting, because a few of the bosses that India had a problem with, I didn't, and vice versa. And but I got through it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I even now, I kind of, you probably know Mossbag. I watch some of his lore videos, etc., and so on and so forth. So I haven't played Outer Wilds. I don't know if it's in Game Pass or not. If not, I might have to pick it up.
It was actually given as. Also, as games for gold as well. It was given.
That's right. Yeah, I think
I know, because I have it.
You own a super duper edition, Luke, don't you? Collectors.
Yeah. Of Outer Wilds.
Yes.
I own the kind of super duper digital. Well, actually, so I bought the original game on PC, but I didn't play it much. Okay. And then one day it was on Game Pass. And I was like, I'm just sat here with a controller, I'll play it. And I actually completed it on Xbox. Okay. And then I picked it up. I still had it on PC, and I bought the DLC. It has one piece of DLC called Echoes of the Eye, which is equally incredible. And then, played that. I don't have any physical... I've looked for about 8 months plus for like merchandise for this game, and there is some, but not the kind of stuff that I want. So, but I've been desperate to find like stuff for it, to evidence my love for it. But I think VJ, like, you can pick it up for quite cheap now. I think it's called the Archaeologist Edition, which is the base game plus the DLC. You can get it on Xbox for maybe £15, $20, something like that. So I think if it's not for everyone. Like, not everyone's going to love it. Just like not everyone loves Hollow Knight, right? But I loved it.
Luke, I'd have to. That can't be true. That statement you just made.
What about not everyone loving Hollow Knight?
Yeah,
it is.
No, you might have to retract that.
You wait till Indie Gamer hears this. I will make sure he will hear this section.
Different opinions on you.
I'm just pulling your leg, Luke.
I know.
You do pick
go buy Outer Wilds.
You do pick them. You do pick our guests, don't you, Stubbs? We're going to have an emergency.
Also, to confirm, VJ, yes, Luke is the youngest person on the panel.
Yeah, I'm only 18.
18, yeah. He's 18.
He's not, he's not 18.
Stubbs, don't confuse 19, Stubbs. He's already thinking that it's probably half true.
All right, I'm 20. Okay.
Look, he's mentally calculating now. That's why he's gone quiet.
No. Luke's told me before, but I've just forgot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm 20 plus 12.
Youngster.
Yeah, you're a young man.
You are.
No.
I'm near the 4-0. I'll be 40 next year. I will be. But
Bus pass in already.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah. And also, remember, being 40 means you are now middle-aged.
well, next year we're talking like.
No, it's true. Remember, the UK, was it the age?
Be 2024. I'll be 40.
Yes, you'll still be middle-aged though.
I always thought 30.
So basically,
It's obviously
what
not.
Luke is saying, right? What Luke said earlier is basically Stubbs Gaming isn't going to finish Hollow Knight until he's 77.
Ah, well, yeah. That's
Yeah,
probably
basically.
right.
But then we'll all
probably
be
come out of
plugged
Game Pass
into.
by then. It's only 15 quid anyway. I have been looking at the price. I have been. But it seems to sit there forever. Probably when Silksong comes into Game Pass, they'll probably just remove it from Game Pass and switch it. It's my guess. That is. Or it may just stay there. It might. But
Stay there forever.
Probably will. Some of the games do, like Edith Finch. Yeah, some people said it left.
That's a good game.
It didn't leave. I haven't 100% at that, but it's one of the best games I've ever played. But I better not talk about it no more. People moan about it because I talk about it too much. But I need to replay it because didn't they update it with like
yes,
red
they give
graphics?
it. Yeah, they gave it a patch, didn't they? So I think it's 60 FPS and.
I also had a little bit of a. Does it have a DLC? I think it's a Gears DLC that's added or something. You know.
Yeah, you play
we
as
don't
Marcus
need
Phoenix's
that.
gun.
That would ruin the game. We don't need that. No. Do you want to talk about Wulong Fallen Dynasty? I know you're dying to talk about.
Go on, Removable.
He's been dying.
Who's he talking to me? I don't know. I've just been sitting here listening.
You can kick it off then, because I haven't really played.
Well, you're the one who's completed it.
I have not. I would say probably if Luke had the time, he's probably would have completed it.
Come on, Removable. He did. He clearly said he'd completed downloading it.
Yes.
Oh, that's what? Okay. That's more Stubbs.
Taking notes.
That's more the case. To be honest with you, it's pretty much, it's your fault, VJ, as you said. You said you like. Do you know? I'm starting to think that you actually like being forced to play games by people because you had Indy basically force you to play Hollow Knight. I kind of pretty much forced you to play Elden Ring, and now Wulong. I'm starting to think, to be honest with you wait for someone to come and go, right, you're going to play this with me. That's it. Shut up. Let's play.
Yeah. I'm easily led. I'm feeble-minded.
There's the historical background to it. Come on, look, Indy, myself. Yeah, because you said to me, oh, I don't feel like it. I said, look, just give it a go. Yep. Give it a go. Give it a try. And you were still umming and ahhing. Then we tried co-op. And now it's been almost every bloody night for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that co-op kind of unlocked the game for me. I think, as I said to you, Removal, and I don't know if you found it the same, Luke. And obviously, I won't ask Stubbs because he completed on day of launch, so it's probably a distant memory of him now. I attempted the first boss dozens of times and then deleted the demo, and then I deleted the game as well. Then I reinstalled the game just to beat the first boss because, as I mentioned to you, Luke, about Hollow Knight, about, oh my goodness, have I actually still got the faculties to actually not only play this and enjoy it, but conquer it as well. And I thought, that kind of same desire kind of crept up on me, and I was sleeping at night, and I thought, no, I've got to go back and reinstall it. And then Removal saying, oh, let's try co-op, and it was pretty straightforward, the co-op. It worked really seamlessly. And I wouldn't have continued with Wulong unless Removable coaxed me into the co-op mode. And look, Wulong, I don't want to critically, do a critical analysis on the game, but there are some things. There is a reason why. I think there was a stat out, and I can't verify the stat because I don't know where it came from. Where 2/3 of the
was it an achievement thing that you read it from?
I don't know. It was some article where 2/3 of the people that are playing that tried Wulong didn't go past the first boss, and I think that's a design flaw. And And we talked about its the visual style and the animation in the engine compared to like the Ninja Gaiden series all the way to here. There's remnants of all of that, but there's other new things, and there's basic elements that they should have included in the game, which wouldn't have been difficult to do with that, which would have which by not doing so has kind of mars the overall quality of the game. Not by a huge percentage or anything like that. It's still a fantastic game. And as you were saying, Removable, hey, look, it's in Game Pass. What are you got to cry about? But all in all, if they'd have just approached the game a little bit differently instead of like hitting you with a hammer straight off the bat with that boss, I wouldn't have mind if it was in a scaling difficulty tutorial mode, but not like that to really kind of slap you around for about 2 hours before you can get past it, sort of thing.
I think it was a little bit of a trend. As I said, our recent one of the games I reviewed also had something similar where the first boss is your spike, and the idea is the first boss is basically, it's there to teach you how to play the game, but in a very brutal manner. So the first boss is, you need to parry, you need to learn this parry, because if you don't learn this parry, you're not really going to be able to do the rest of the bosses. And it brutally tells you that. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that you either, nope, that's it, I can't be bothered to keep trying this and get it right, or to get the timing down, or a bit like yourself, nope, let's try it, let's get the timing down, and we'll move forward with it. It's, I don't know, to me, it seems like it's an artist choice. It's an artistic choice. I think a bit like how Elden Ring has its own version, an artistic choice of, not hand holding, and it's, the biggest, I think it's a bit like, Elden Ring. As you come out the gates, there's the guy on the golden horse, and you think, oh, I can attack him, and you very quickly learn, no, you can't. I think it's there to give you a clear indication of, you need to learn. You need to learn the mechanics of the game. Elden Ring does it slightly different, which basically says, look, you can avoid this, but please be aware, this is what you need to learn. With Wulong, it's basically you're locked into it. I think.
Yeah.
I think if I was going to do it, and this is me as a non-developer, what they did slightly do wrong, in my opinion, again, it would be that I think they don't allow co-op until after you've beaten that first boss. I think they should have probably put co-op in. But I can understand why. I can understand why. Because some people think, oh, the moment co-op's there, everything becomes easier. That is correct in some areas, but as you well know, with the boss that we struggled quite heavily with, it's not the case. In some cases, it trebles or doubles the difficulty of a particular boss. So I don't know. I think it's a more of a design choice. What do you think?
Luke, do you want to say anything on Wulong?
Yes, easy. No.
How far have you gone with Wulong, if I may ask?
No, it's
that for Luke. I can believe that as a statement. It's him saying it's easy.
Easy. It's complete it, mate.
Yeah, complete it. No, it's not easy. I am on the boss called, it's like Aoye, or spelled Aoye, Aoye. It's the big kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's got kind of big tendrils and it's a bit hairy.
The ball with tendrils coming out of it.
Yes, that's the boss.
Yes, so it jumps around and it flips out. Yes, okay. It's in almost like a little green grove area.
I thought it was describing my wife there for a minute.
Yeah, so that's probably 5 or 6 bosses in, roughly speaking.
Yes,
include the first boss as well. So a fair chunk into it. I haven't been able to dedicate as much time to it because basically I played it on day.
It's too hard for you.
It's too hard. I played it on day 1 when it released on Game Pass, and I'd say I played it kind of the the most hours went into it over the course of that day and then 2 subsequent days.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of front loaded it a lot, and then I've just not had the time to go back to it. But I'm really enjoying it. I think it is difficult. The first boss, funnily enough, is probably the most difficult boss that I've faced so far. It took me about an hour to beat that boss. I've been playing it just solo. I haven't co-opted yet. So,
Yep.
But yeah, like the first boss, it's quite interesting because it is basically, it's a tutorial boss, but at the difficulty level that you'd probably find a boss at, kind of midway into other games.
Yeah.
But as you've said, the intention really is to very rapidly teach you the keys to success in that game, which is that unless you are able to parry, you will not have a good time with the game. And I think that's kind of a deliberate filter of players at that point. And I don't think like that first boss is it's kind of like Neo in the Matrix. Once you get the parry, the first boss is actually really easy. You just see kind of zeros and ones at that point. But he was a bit tricky. It's not helped actually by the fact that he's got 2 phases. I think that's quite interesting for a first boss because normally they definitely don't have 2 phases. Like he's been the most difficult one so far. I know there's one coming up. I think Lubu, who's supposed to be quite difficult.
Yes.
He's on a horse, isn't he?
That's right. Yep.
So we'll see. I'll know my prowess by facing him. I think.
If you have any trouble, you call us in.
Cool,
yeah.
I'm going to do it solo.
To be honest with you, you might actually find it's actually easier solo. I have spotted online that actually co-op, it ramps the difficulty up. It scales the difficulty up depending on the person you have. And I've heard people say actually, even with the AI, they actually found it was easier to just do it solo rather without having the AI to help you out. So there could be a scaling difficulty issue with the game, and maybe that's one of the reasons why people are struggling, because they've got I'll bring in some AI just to help you out, and it's actually instead of like bump it up 5 or 10%, it's like right 50%, bam. You're like, Jesus Christ, because I know we had a very big time struggling with it. I think it was like 2 days of shit, of just literally nothing. We couldn't even pass down. Was it like a quarter of his green health bar?
Removable. I have to step in there because I think there's been a couple of patches which are either nerfing and buffing the situation. And we both on 2 nights that we did try it prior to succeeding is that you had lagging on your side.
Yes.
And I had lagging the next day.
Yep.
So and that also hindered our ability to beat him.
Yes, this is true. Yeah,
I think what it does as well, which most games do this, where they have a boss and it's co-op, is it's not necessarily that the difficulty ramps up as such, but the health pool gets exponentially larger, which makes it a lot more of a slog to fight these bosses. Like you just chip away at health as opposed to doing big damage. And to be fair, a lot of the bosses so far at least have had pretty large health pools, even if I'm going in alone. So yeah, I'll do it solo. It's funny, I mean, the AI companions are just totally useless as well. I don't really know why they've included them. Like they just don't do anything. They die pretty quickly. It's not like Elden Ring, for example, where you can, the summons can actually take out a boss. Yeah, they can,
depending on how you scale them.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Mimic tier, for example, that's really good. I mean, even post nerf, that's still pretty powerful. So yeah, I found it quite interesting because I thought,
Sorry, Luke. Sorry to drift onto Elden Ring just for a second. But me and Removable, we were playing Elden Ring, not co-op, but just chatting while we were playing. We both had the Mimic tier. Did you finish the game with the Mimic tier, or did you switch to a different summons later? Or different?
I still haven't finished Elden Ring. It got lost on the Eternal Backlog. Now I do have like 34 hours in it. and I will go and finish it.
So you've got at least about quarter way through then? Say quarter way through? Yeah.
I'm starting to see a pattern here, Luke. Your middle name's not Stubbs, is it?
Oh no, I complete at least one game a year. But
that's at least 200% more than Stubbs.
Removal. You know what game that is, don't you? That's Edith Finch.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, but remember that Edith Finch was in 2019.
Oh, I didn't play it in 2019 though.
Was it 2020?
I don't remember when I played it.
It definitely wasn't the last couple of years, that's for sure. Was it prior to COVID or after COVID?
I don't know.
I'll tell
Jesus,
you
you've got memory.
I'll tell you what I have completed though, which shows my prowess. I've completed Returnal. Nobody's completed Returnal except for me. Nobody.
It's definitely not Stubbs, that's for sure. I found actually the thing with Returnal is like, I don't know if anyone remembers the game, but Returnal for me was very similar to a very oldish game called oh god, this is gonna kill me now.
Strange name for a game.
No, but it had very similar sort of mechanics in terms of when you can use abilities in terms of their abilities, and it's one of those things that we don't see more of where you can use psychic abilities in games that often. And I'm just surprised that there aren't more games like it, to be honest with you, if that makes sense.
What psychic abilities do you use in Returnal?
Returnal is the one that you can basically pick up furniture and throw stuff?
No, I think you're thinking of Control.
Oh, it's good. No, you're right. Control. That is it. Sorry,
Yeah.
I am complete. There you go. See, I'm completely out of the head.
There you go.
So you don't know anyone else that's completed Returnal?
No, I do. I know a few. Well, the funny thing is, I remember obviously I bought Returnal when it launched on PS5.
Yeah.
And I completed it in about 19
2 hours.
Yeah, about 2 hours. About 19 hours, which is kind of like about
You were gunning it
for it. Yeah, I think some people were completing
the patch.
Yes, yeah, I completed that within like a week. I was totally addicted to it, and completed it in a week. So that was pre-patch before they introduced some of the helpful stuff.
Yeah.
And I only died. The funny thing about Returnal is I died a lot, but I only died to a boss. Kind of my total deaths amongst all the bosses, of which there are 5 or 6, I can't remember, was 3. I only died 3 times. Some people, however, like I died more in the arenas, like just going through getting to the bosses, because some of that was really difficult at times. But I remember then looking back, like even a month later, and people were still struggling like with the first boss. And I think with Returnal, the reason is because a Souls game, you know what to expect, right? It's melee based. There's all that stuff going on. Returnal's like a 3D bullet hell, which I think some people just struggled with. Like it's just a different type of experience. I really loved it, and I just kind of got it straight away. But I think people really struggle with the bullet hell element because there's a ton of dodging and working out iframes and working out how to navigate your way through bosses or areas and try and survive. And also that game, as didn't have the save points, right? So you could just be mid-run and then die, and then you would literally go way back.
Old school gaming.
Yeah. So and it also didn't, even though it's a roguelite, it didn't like you didn't really get powerful kind of incrementally after each death, because the only thing you unlocked effectively were access to weapons that you could find randomly on your journey, or access to certain other power-ups that you could find randomly. Like you never really had a holdover of, well, okay, well, I'm a little bit stronger this time than I was before. You never got that in the game, so it was pretty punishing.
It sounds like you do like a punishing game, to be honest with you. Is that the sort of progression you've had in your time in gaming? Do you think it's come up, or is that always something you've always had in terms of in gaming through your gaming journey, I should say?
Yeah, I think, yeah, to some extent, I think so. I mean, I just, I don't know. I just like, I find some kind of games like I've always really loved Souls games. You know, that kind of level of difficulty. I think it's really rewarding to play it. And I think it's different strokes, isn't it? Because I think some people, they want to play games just to relax and not have a challenge.
Yeah.
So like my wife, for example, who plays a lot of games, she'll pretty much pick story mode or kind of the easier mode, or sometimes she'll pick the normal mode, but like she's not interested in having a kind of big challenge to a game. Yeah, so but she'll pick that, and that's because she just wants to enjoy it, and she's really story driven, right? That's the thing that's really important for her in a lot of games. So she just wants to experience that and enjoy it. I'm kind of just different, you know. Everybody's a bit different. I like that
punishment,
stuff.
pain.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, some flagellation would be nice. Like I want to be, I want to feel some reward for playing some of these games.
No. It's just, I must admit, as someone who I have because I review a lot of indie games and different genres, it's one of the things that I've kind of never pigeonholed myself into different genres. However, I would say one of the ones that I was almost adamantly against was the Dark Souls kind of genre. And it's because I simply played the original Dark Souls, went in as effectively a bow and arrow character, and really screwed myself up with all the different leveling techniques. And it was brutal to the point where it did physically put me off playing any Dark Souls game ever again.
Yeah.
And through the different indie games and playing the different indie game versions of Dark Souls, I slowly progressed into liking Dark Souls enough to kind of go back. Well, I should say go back to my at least take on probably a From Software Dark Souls-esque game, which was Elden Ring, to the point now I'm absolutely enjoying sort of Dark Souls games. But as I said, it's kind of a switch, and it has been a slow progression through time into this genre. So I'm always interested in hearing it from people who've like literally always been in there. There's like, this is it. This has been the thing that I've always wanted. Where it's like myself, who are literally the complete opposite. So I suppose the question I'm kind of asking is that how would it be easier to attract new people into this genre that it is pretty punishing? And as you said, it's a kind of self-flagellation sort of style of gameplay. How do you get people, fresh new players, into this? Do you think it is maybe some of the famous titles giving more options like they did with Elden Ring? Or is it the better way to say go with the more indie titles that kind of do like a Dark Souls-esque game, but it's much lighter, so you can slowly progress into the genre at your own pace? What would you say?
The honest answer is I don't really know, because I think everybody's different. So like for me, I remember playing, to give you an example, kind of a similar-ish experience to you. I remember playing Demon Souls when it first came to the West. I actually played it at a friend's house on the PlayStation 3, and I played it for 20 to 30 minutes or so, and I just didn't get it. Like I didn't understand I found it very difficult. I found it very obtuse. I didn't find the combat particularly great. Like it ran like shit. It looked pretty horrible.
It did. Yep.
And I was like, I don't really get it. But my friend was like, no, honestly, it's really, really good. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Exactly the same thing with my brother. I absolutely hate it. He absolutely loved it, and I was like, I don't understand how you can play this game. Don't understand.
Yeah, just didn't get it. Just didn't understand at all. And then it went away, and I played a lot of other things. And then Dark Souls came out, and I remembered that it was the same developer. And I heard a lot of great things about it, and I was like, well, I'll give it another try. And something just clicked on the, when I did it, right? When I played that game, even though fundamentally it's just a, it's just a spiritual successor to Demon Souls. It's not even that much of a big change in terms of the mechanics. And then I loved them ever since, and I went back to Demon Souls and I completed it, and I played the remake, which is amazing, by the way. And I just love those games. So I don't really know. I think for some it will just like some people will just never ever like that kind of game. They just won't like Souls games, and I don't even think it's an accessibility thing, because I think it's kind of on the same track as stuff like Monster Hunter, where you either get it and you really enjoy it or you don't. And they could introduce a load of features to Monster Hunter tomorrow, and people just they still wouldn't take to it. And I saw people, for example, with Elden Ring thinking, okay, right, here's like, I've never liked these games. I never get on with them. Here's my route in. I'm going to jump into it. And they still disliked it, and they were like, okay, I think that's probably settled it. So, equally, I did see a lot of new people get into like Elden Ring because it was more accessible and open world and that sort of stuff, and say, oh, I love these now, I get it. So I think it's just different things for different people, and I don't think there's a real method of getting people into the games, because it's not fundamentally just about difficulty in like a Souls game. It's actually for some people it's the broader,
the journey, the rewards, the discovery, the whole package. It's not just one thing.
And conversely, like for some people who dislike it, it's not just the difficulty. It's like the narrative's obtuse, or that its combat is kind of simplistic, and they don't like that. It's more cerebral, more tactical, and it's not really showy or anything like that. So I think those are reasons why people don't play it. So absent of fundamentally changing all of that, at which point do you even have a Souls game anymore? Probably not. No. I don't think. I think some people just don't like it, and they'd prefer to play, Devil May Cry or something.
Do you think maybe like I would say the Dark Soul-esque, almost the Dark Soul light games, which I do see more of now, coming into the fray? Do you think that might potentially sway them slightly? Because I know that's how it kind of went with me. It's more of a case of, do you know what? It's like, it's a Dark Souls-esque game, or it's a Dark Souls light, and that kind of lead me in, and probably, if anything, taught me maybe some of the fundamental basics, like your parries, your backstabs, and then it was like, it's like one of the very first Dark Souls games I completed was actually Code Vein, and I was like, Jesus, this is a really good game. Really liked it.
Yeah,
and it's one of those things. It's like, how the hell that work? I was like, I'm never going to complete a Dark Souls game in my life. And I was just like, how the hell I've done it?
Yeah, maybe like it's a bit like Wolong. I think some people take to that, even though they might not like Souls games, because you think about, well, what does that do differently? Yes, it's punishing in the same way, but it has a very standard narrative. Not a very good one, admittedly, but it has one. It has very simplistic level design, right? It's not kind of the in and out Swiss cheesy Metroidvania style level design that a Dark Souls or an Elden Ring has, or not even an Elden Ring, because that's kind of something entirely different, but like a Sekiro or something like that.
Yep.
So people might take to that a bit more, right? Its combat is much quicker, much more stylish, much more complicated. So people might enjoy that. So maybe for some people, they'll play Wolong and be like, yeah, I love this. Actually, I don't usually like these games. Maybe I'll go back. And, I think for some, they'll hear about, it being close to Sekiro, right? It's probably, most analogous to that game. And then they'll play Sekiro. I did, yeah. I didn't complete Sekiro.
I've never played Sekiro, so I looked at Wulong and I kind of thought, because one of the reasons I haven't played Sekiro is like, this looks like it's going to be an absolute arse of a game. I've heard about its historical difficulty in terms of basically parry or just don't play the game. And
I mean,
so
that's what
it was
it is, basically.
Yeah, so for me, it was like Wulong seemed to be, and apologies to anyone who's listening, who is a Sekiro fan, but it seems to be, for me, when I looked at it, it's the Sekiro's light version. It might give you and when I played the demo, it's like, okay, so this is what you mean when it turns, by parrying. Don't get me wrong, I know the parry system now from Elden Ring, but this is a completely different way of potentially doing it. It's like, oh, okay. So now I am thinking, it's like, do I tempt Sekiro? Is it still going to be quite as brutal as I sound it could be?
How many notches more difficult is Sekiro, Luke, compared to
your
experience?
About 5 or 6 notches.
So 50 to 60% more difficult.
Yeah, it's very difficult. It's the only Souls game that I've personally found too difficult.
Okay, maybe I'll hold off then.
at least too trying of my patience. Not to say, again, I mean, it acts like other Souls games in that it's not cheap. It doesn't cheat you out of victory. But unlike other Souls games, I think the thing with Sekiro is that, one, it's heavily parry based. So that's like Wolong, that's fundamental. But it is the window for parry is much more unforgiving.
It's much more tighter than okay.
Which really tests your reflexes, and enemies are far more unforgiving in Sekiro compared to Wolong. Wolong, you can mess up and you can get away with it a bit sometimes on some of the bosses. You can't on a lot of the bosses in Sekiro. You can't do that. I got about halfway through Sekiro, and then I
threw the controller against the wall.
Yeah, and to be fair, if I went back to it now, I think I'd probably do better. But it was difficult at the time.
Which is fair. Yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing. It's like, I look at my journey, I would never even remotely thought about touching Sekiro. It's like, just never got a chance. Not interested. But as time has progressed, and me testing the waters and trying out what I would basically classify as the lighter versions of these genres, I'm starting to realise, and a bit like as VJ says, I'm starting to realise maybe my skill, even though I'm an old fart, is still slightly there, or I'm still can challenge myself or grow my skill slightly. And so it's like, it's put a bit of doubt in my mind, where originally it was just like complete and utter locked mentality. That was like, never going to go near it. Not going to even think about it.
I mean, you should say that, Removal, because I think last year was Elden Ring, and I couldn't bring myself to play. If Silksong came out, I don't think I'd have played it. But so I played Spider-Man, and I got a PS5, and I replayed Final Fantasy VII Remake. I still think it's a fantastic game. And this year I was thinking about Wulong, and I thought, this is difficult. Maybe Silksong's coming, and I need to keep all my sort of faculties, perhaps, all my investment for a difficult game in terms of that. But the other reason why I wanted to play Wulong is because I love feudal Japan. I really like Ghost of Tsushima, and obviously, everybody knows that Rise of the Ronin is the next Team Ninja game, as far as we know. And I really want to play that game. And it'd be really interesting, because is it going to take because as Luke was saying, in terms of linear or wide linear level design in some of these games, and the difficulties and so on and so forth, this Rise of the Ronin seems to be perhaps a more open world game, maybe more like Elden Ring. So it'd be interesting to see Team Ninja go from
Team Ninja's own version of Elden Ring, is what you're saying.
Yeah, going from Ninja Gaiden and Wulong, etc. And going over to an open world game, if it is in fact an open world game in Rise of the Ronin, and see how they try and make that transition, like From Software has done from Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, which I think deserves a mention, fantastic game, over to Elden Ring. So yeah, I think it's all very interesting. I don't know if, Luke, you're familiar with Rise of the Ronin, or if it's intrigued you at all.
Yeah.
But,
no, I'm really looking forward to it. I
know it's no Edith Finch, but You know?
What
never going
is-
to beat
what
that.
is-
No, true.
I think if you look at actually the two projects, I think that it's clearly the more ambitious project from Team Ninja, because Wolong's really good, but it's basically Neo,
B-team.
but
Neo 3.
but China, right? That's kind of what it is. And Neo is great, but this is, Rise of the Ronin looks effectively to be their take on something like Ghost of Tsushima, right? So open world kind of action adventure. But I think the key difference is obviously with that kind of Team Ninja combat that they've evolved over the years. So I think that could be really good. I mean, the only thing that worries me about it is I thought it looked quite nice from trailers. Like visually, it kind of looked like a bit of a step up from what Team Ninja do, but they're not exactly, which is strange because Ninja Gaiden was such a technical powerhouse back in the day, but these days they're not exactly known for being, very technically proficient, right? Their games don't particularly look great or run well. So
yeah, some of the Luke, some of the environments and the character models look fantastic, but then there was a few I had to take a double take, especially when his horse was going up. The hill.
The same.
You know what? This is not final. This has got to be alpha, right? Because this is a placeholder. It's got to be.
It looked like there were some sections that were further ahead than others, right?
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Yeah.
In that horse scene, I know exactly what you mean. I think it's because I think that horse scene looks worse actually if you've played Ghost of Tsushima. And you think about
Metal Gear Solid 5.
And you think
or
about
Red
like
Dead.
That's always. I'm not gonna compare Team Ninja too high to those standards, but it's kind of more difficult when you've seen that kind of similar environment done in another game, and the other game looks significantly better. But maybe that was a kind of old bit of footage, then that's evolved since then, because other elements look really nice.
We have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and it was shown 6 months ago. At 2024, so it could be a 2-year gap between it comes. I think there's a hell of a lot, but the premise and the promise,
it looks great.
Has got me, but as Removable would say, is let's just be cautious and wait and see.
Be cautious, everything's One question I will say is, did you ever play Tenchu, Luke?
Yeah, I love Tenchu.
Am I correct? Tenchu was made. Is it From Software?
Yeah, that's right.
So I suppose the question I was going to be asking is, do you think it's the franchise is ripe for a rebirth? Maybe not a remaster, maybe a rebirth. Because I think that's what a lot of people, when people saw Sekiro, they were like, finally, a Tenchu game, especially with the fact that you could do instant kills from rooftops.
Yeah, like stealth, yeah.
And I think a couple of people, at least I knew, was like, oh, I'm getting Sekiro. And it's like, oh, okay. It's like, it's going to be Tenchu 2.0. And they were soon disappointed by the fact it wasn't Tenchu 2.0. But would you think it's another franchise that is open to the possibility? Because I'm surprised it hasn't been, or is it something, do you think? Because I'm trying to find out about it, but is it a franchise that's been dead in the water? It's been locked in some sort of legal dead in the water situation?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, other than I mean the last game was a long time ago, wasn't it? It was
the 360 year, wasn't it? With the Tenchu. I've got it, in fact, and I played the hell out of it.
Yeah.
There
was the one for the Wii. Yeah, Shadow Assassins, wasn't it?
Yes, Shadow Assassins.
Because
it's all multiplayer. You could do multiplayer with it. 3 or 4 people could run across the same map. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if there's, as you say, perhaps some legal wrangling, which is why that they kind of dropped the IP in terms of active development, but. I think Sekiro was their kind of spiritual Tenchu. Now, obviously, it's not the same because Tenchu was a stealth game. That's what it focused on. Actually, the combat was pretty poor in Tenchu. If you got down to it, it was all about.
Oh,
stealth.
it was. Well, I think the idea was the moment you went into combat, you've got no chance. The idea was you had to. It was promoting you to be a stealth game. It's a bit like Metal Gear Solid. It was like You can run in and try and beat someone up, but just make sure you can be dead very quickly.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, provided there was no legal wrangling about it, I don't see why they couldn't bring it back and do something with it. I mean, they're look from they're doing another Armored Core, right? So
things, there needs to be normally with these things, there's got to be a desire and there's got to be someone championing it.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
I think Miyazaki's, I don't know if this quote is correct, I might be paraphrasing it, where he kind of, I think it's the same reason why Bloodborne 2 is not announced. He seems like a guy that just wants to keep moving forward. And I say that, and then there's that other game which is coming back this year. What was it again?
Armored Core.
Armored Core's coming back, so there may be hope for Removable. But yeah, they've got some really good IPs right under their belt, and
they've got some fantastic IPs, and that's why I'm surprised. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still surprised that he can move forward with his progress or the story he wishes to move forward with in terms of what he wants to tell. But I suppose maybe he doesn't want to. He wants his team to focus on the story he wants to tell, and not maybe spread that team a little bit thinly to try and get a bit of a remaster in, or he's done the story. He's had enough of the Tenchu series, because it did. Well, there was quite a few games, to be honest with you. Okay, there were some PSP ones that we probably don't want to talk about, but there was a few games in that series, and maybe he feels that he's done to death. He's done to death with it, in terms of the actual franchise.
I think there's also an element of sort of being victims of their own success, given the sales numbers of Elden Ring, and obviously Armored Core was in development, but what do they do next? Do they stick to open world, or do they go back to a game that may only sell 5 to 10 million copies versus Elden Ring has done close to 20? And I don't know, maybe Tenchu does fall into that category, or I'd like to see something that incorporates elements of Tenchu in it, but I think Elden Ring had its fair degree of stealth, right? Not to the same design.
Not to the same design grid, but I mean, you could blend those two together to create a very engaging stealth game, without a doubt. But I think, as you rightly said, it's I don't know. It's one of those things that maybe him as a designer, him as a creator, just like, do you know what? I know where I want to go with this, and he seems a very much a driven person. He will not bow to pressure, regardless if it's public pressure or whatsoever, or even player pressure. He will not bow to it. This is my vision. This is it. You like it or you don't like it. And I think that's what has kept his games, whether you like them or loathe them, you have to admit that's what kept his games moving forward. Is that one singular driven route forward, and I mean, to be honest, woe betide if he ever retires, because I don't think any successor will come close to his driven style. I think. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, him and a few others like him are quite unique, right, in the terms of the content that they create, not just in terms of his ability to write and design and so on and so forth, but all the other facets to his game that we don't know about, right? And that's really hard to find in one person, and especially someone like that who can then design it, but not only that, but delegate his projects across 2 sprawling teams, right? It's really difficult to find some people like that. Ultimately creators and vision holders, but still able to delegate to as I say, to sprawling teams and deliver prolifically. I mean, it's kind of unheard of, right?
He's had, I think I'm trying to think of a game that hasn't been a hit, because it's easier to go the other way around. True, yeah. Stubbs has mentioned in the chat that one of the reasons why he is quiet is because he feels like he can't add to this, and that's fair enough. But I'm sure we could probably maybe coach him into the Dark Souls genre, maybe.
Actually, it's a question for Luke. You know that you mentioned that your partner, your wife, your girlfriend. Sorry, I forgot how you addressed her, but you were mentioning about the fact that she plays games, she loves games, and she plays all sorts of games, but she prefers to play them because for the story, right? And for the experience, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I really like the art design in Sekiro. I really like the lore and everything about it. But it was a little bit tough when I played it. But I'm not a PC gamer. But I was talking to Stubbs about Hollow Knight earlier. But are there patches available where, if you want to enjoy the game, but it just makes it easier so you can get through it, right? And it's or do patches like that not exist on PC for games like Sekiro and Hollow Knight, etc., where you just want to be able to experience the whole universe? Yeah.
I think I know for Sekiro there was a mod that made it easier. I can't remember what it was called, but yeah, they do exist. I mean, obviously they're not.
It wasn't called the Edith Finch mod, was it?
Yeah, the stubs mod. It does exist on PC. I mean, that's I guess one of the nice things about PC is that you can, there'll always be something out there that you can do to the game to make it more preferable to you. So yes, you can do that for Sekiro on PC. Don't know about Hollow Knight because I've never looked into it, but I'm sure, again, I mean, particularly for Hollow Knight, given that it's huge audience on PC for that game, I'm sure there's something you can use. So Stubbs, there's a chance. Yeah,
I'm sure I can get through Hollow Knight. I've just got to put some effort in. Hollow Knight's ain't a Souls game, is it? It's a Metroidvania.
Yeah, no,
so it's
difficult though.
Yeah,
different types of difficulty. There's still difficulty.
Yeah, no, it's I've got to try this Wulong more. I've got to try and find where you go to be defeated by this amazingly hard boss at the start.
I think it won't take you long to find the first boss. It's just, I think the difficulty spike is probably one of the biggest indicators of why so many people as
you have to stay calm as well, don't you? Because I get very amped up when I can't win. So
never have I ever seen you do that. Never.
Playing it on Gears, so it's not really much of a problem. Mate.
I saw you on Horde mode on Gears 5.
I'm not very good on Horde mode.
You was not a happy bunny.
Multiplayer, Gnash shotgun, I'm happy.
You was not a happy bunny when I was helping you out.
You're too damn good at it. That's what.
What do you mean? All I did was support us. I did nothing.
You were great.
And don't forget your commitment to Redfall, Mr. Stubbs. I don't want you to take a 6-week vacation in Florida all of a sudden.
Redfall. Yeah, I'll definitely.
Look at that. He can't even remember it now. His brain's like Redfall? Fall of Red? What's that then?
Oh, QLEDs. Yeah, in the past, I've had some quite hot takes on my podcast before, but I've got nothing to do a hot take on. I try and stay calm these days, and I try not to stay on the hot takes front really these days. I'm more multi-platform these days. I try and view all platforms all platforms have got good games really. I don't really do the hot takes anymore, but I used to. As RemovableSanity and VJ, remember?
We need one platform to rule them all. Come on.
No, we don't. We need all platforms. We do.
PC.
Well, if you had one platform, the world would be a terrible place for gaming. Game Pass would be 50 quid a month if the Xbox was any company about. All the games would be 100 quid. I'm joking, people, but that could happen if it was one platform only. But there's a little bit of a hot take. There you go.
Stubbs, what top 3 or 4 games are you looking forward to this year?
Hollow Knight, Silk Song. I am actually looking forward to it.
What, 3 copies of it or 2 other games you can possibly mention?
What games am I playing? Oh, right. So actual games I want to play. There's The Last Case of Benedict Fox coming out. That looks very good. If you haven't seen that, go over to Indie Gamer's channel. He's got a preview of that game up on his channel. I played it down on Steam. It's quite a good looking game. That is. That's coming to Game Pass day and date, I believe. might give Starfield a go because it's in Game Pass, and I'll give Redfall a go because you guys want to play some co-op with that as well.
To Removable, would you see that? Like he's doing us a favour.
Exactly, yeah. Because that one time I played, I did really well in that Back for Blood. Then I didn't play it again, did I?
No, it was really good fun though.
Tell you what is fun though. That always had fun with Sea of Thieves is good with friends, but apart from when I fall asleep and
yes,
leave you to it for a bit.
Luke, you're not going to believe, but every time we played Sea of Thieves, we're like half an hour in, we're just setting sail and all that, and this guy just falls asleep, and it's just carrying just sitting at the ship.
To be honest, with you, I started to think. I think it's the waves. He sits there, he watches the waves go past, and all of a sudden, that's it. He's out.
What a shit pirate!
We're all going to pitch in. We're all going to chip in and send him a hammock for Christmas.
You can imagine what it is, though. He's like, right, let's go and get some.
I'm downstairs on the PC now. Who's that? Downstairs on the PC, but
we thought Sam Fisher had got you, Stubbs.
and other games this year.
There's so many.
I don't know.
All on Game Pass, isn't it? That's what you're going to be playing. Every single one that's on Game Pass.
It doesn't have to be a system you own. I mean, I know what I'm looking for.
Well, if it's not a system I own, how am I going to play it?
No, just like what would you like to play? What would you looking forward to if you could?
It's definitely. Well, if I had the system, definitely the Ronin one. That's definitely one that I'd love to be interested in playing.
That's on PC, isn't it?
That is
that the one
on PC and PlayStation.
Yeah, but not till next year.
I know one VJ's looking forward to. It's called Octopath Traveler 2.
2, yes.
Yeah.
It's already
the Iron Lords have given it, the website have given it a rating of 10. They have.
I really enjoyed the first one, Luke. It's just that it just caught me at a time when I was missing Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest 11. I really enjoyed it, and I was debating whether to play it, in full 3D mode or 2D mode, and then Octopath Traveler just turned up in Game Pass, and I thought, what the hell? And I thought, okay, it's in Game Pass, let's play it. So I played it, and I was 100 odd hours in. And I love the pacing of it. I love the visual style, and then obviously, Final Fantasy. Which Final Fantasy is it getting the 2D 3? Is it Final Fantasy 3 that's getting the 2D 3D remake treatment?
7?
No, it's one of the much earlier ones.
Or
I think
5.
It's 3 or 4 or 5. One of those that's getting the 2D 3D treatment, and then obviously Octopath Traveler 2. Everybody says, look, it's Octopath Traveler 1, but with lots and lots of improvements. And I didn't want to see too much about it, but I like the fact that you can visit towns during the day and during the night. I like the fact that they've got much more music and many more different themed locations as well than the first game. And they've all got their own different overworld music, which I think is fantastic. There's just the production values and lots and lots of just general improvements, right? House improvements that make it really enticing for me. And sometimes, like you said, just if you're dialed in, if it captures you, then you're going to play it. And like I said, I would have missed Wulong if Removable hadn't twisted my arm up my back. So.
That's the one thing I absolutely love JRPs, but the biggest crux of JRPs for me is the amount of time I have to put into them.
Persona 5 Royale, my God.
It's a perfect example, but also I've got it's one of the reasons why I struggle with JRPs. It's like, have I got 100 hours to spare? In some cases, being a busy parent and full-time work, no. So it's like then you don't feel like you're doing it justice. You don't feel like if you're not seeing all the side quests, seeing all the lore, seeing everything. It's like, Jesus, am I doing it justice? Is it that? And it's like there's some amazing JRPs out there, but I just don't have the time. It's really, really I struggle with them, to be honest with
you. You're a Final Fantasy fan, aren't you, Luke? To some degree.
Yeah, massive Final Fantasy fan. Yeah, 16's probably top 3 most anticipated for this year.
What maybe may I ask what the other 2 or 3 are? You don't have to limit it. You can say
No, it's difficult actually. I mean, like off the top of my head, the big ones for me this year are Final Fantasy 16, Spider-Man 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Diablo 4, Hades 2, Alan Wake 2, if that does launch this year. Resident Evil 4 remake. Any others? I think those are the big ones for me. Yeah, I think that's it. But in terms of top 3, it's a bit difficult. But Final Fantasy 16 is somewhere in that.
Yeah, I'm with you on Final Fantasy 16 and on Spider-Man 2. I'm playing Miles Morales. I haven't finished it, but it's a really, really good game. And so I'm just wondering if the ABK deal goes through, would Diablo 4 come to Game Pass? Oh, I don't know.
It still comes to the system, but probably not on the Game Pass.
Yeah, I think. I mean, if it did go through, then I don't see why not, especially because Microsoft have the marketing for Diablo 4. So,
okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't bring it.
I'm just being miserly.
One thing I must admit that was absolutely telling out of Luke's list was there was no indie games in there. So clearly he's going. Well,
there was Hades 2.
Hades 2, hasn't that been kind of hasn't that been now been picked up by a mainstream publisher?
No, not really. It's still early access, isn't it, on Steam?
I thought it was. Oh, am I getting this wrong? His Daz would have known. He's here, but I thought they were picked up. They had picked up the original publisher.
Supergiant.
Was it? Or am I misunderstanding?
Owned by Supergiant. Yeah,
it's Supergiant.
I know that. I know that.
Luke, why isn't Silk Song on your list?
Because I don't think it'll launch this year.
I see. Yeah.
I think it'll get pushed.
It was a genuine question. I thought it might come out this year.
Rewind that question again. Was that because you don't think it's coming out?
Yeah. No, I don't think it'll launch this year. I think it'll get pushed.
Indie gamer know that.
I think very early on when Silk Song, I think it was on one of Stubbs' shows, and we were saying, and I had this feeling that it will come out with the launch of the next Switch or whatever that device is going to be. And then when the Edge magazine cover, when it was on the cover of Edge magazine, and I had to look back at all their covers, and typically I was on an average 6 to 8 months on it after being on an Edge cover magazine, the game, a said game would come out, and but this one seems to be quite elusive, shall we say?
Yeah. I think there's a.
Go on.
No, I think there's a chance it will come out this year, but I just get the feeling that they'll get to a point where they'll look at kind of the cadence of what they can develop and probably say, actually, we want to push this a little bit more. I mean, it's not as if Team Cherry can't do that now because of the success of the first game.
I personally think it's a Series S is holding it back.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, God, no
doubt.
We're hitting every trope in this bloody chat, aren't we? We've hit every single.
whereas Hades 2 is almost assuredly coming out because it will hit early access first anyway, like the first game did, and it'll go from there. So I'll absolutely pick that up early access and love it. So
do a live stream on Indie Show.
There you go. Yeah, and I'll just keep saying how much better the Hades is than Hollow Knight, and that's all.
Oh, that'll be the closest that you'll see the stream end very sharply. At that point, it'll be done. Oh, sorry, we've got difficulties.
But I mean, my most anticipated list is dominated by AAAs, but just because a lot of them belong to franchises that I really love, and I often think actually, if you think about. When I think about like the great indie games, they often come out of nowhere. Like it's not as if, apart from a couple of developers now, where you've got Team Cherry, you've got Supergiant, and you've got Playdead. right? Where you'd say, okay,
Yes.
in the
Like
indie space, yeah, exactly. Like in the indie space. Oh, and for me, Mermaid Games now, which is Sam Barlow's studio that made Immortality, etc. Like those four for me are like whatever the next game is. It's really anticipated for me because I know that they'll deliver on quality, and I should say extremely okay games that made Celeste. So 5, we'll call it. The list is getting bigger, but like those are kind of the developers that I'm like, okay, in the indie space, they are going to make a game that I'm sure will be special, barring a disaster. But actually, when you look at you go back, they only did that because it came out of nowhere and made this really special game, right?
100%,
Like,
yeah.
I hadn't heard of Celeste, for example, and then I heard of it one day and I played it, and it's one of my favorite games ever. So I think often the big kind of real amazing indie games come out of nowhere, whereas I think it's a bit more predictable in the AAA space. Not entirely. You do get failures there as well, but
I think the innovation is pushed harder with the indie games because they've had to. They've had to try and do it. And so therefore, when something hits, because the innovation is, it's not saying, don't get me wrong, it's not saying there isn't innovation in the AAA spaces, but it does seem to be a slightly watered down to a degree. At least from what I'm seeing is that there is much more leaps and bounds or willingness, even not whether it's by design or even whether it's the fact they've, funds or other things, to try something different and try something, a new way of things and so forth. That when it does hit, it seems to come out more from the indie side because there's much more developers are pushing these things, as I said, either through time, funds, and just a willingness to try and test new things. Where I think in some cases, I think the reason why the AAA is slightly stagnant or feels a little bit stagnant, at least in my opinion, is that they've got to the point. It's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
And so with that mentality, nothing kind of evolves too much.
Apart from Kojima's games.
Well, his is like, I kind of don't think there is every new game is almost like a completely different genre. It's literally, I don't think that the Metal Gear Solid, he's done that franchise, then he went on to something completely different. It was like, it's not Metal Gear Solid. There is no Metal Gear Solid. It's a completely different franchise. And I kind of suspect he'll probably do that again with a new game. If you look at his historical games, right from Snatcher prior to that, which I feel was one of his best horror games, just for that alone, he literally seems to go, do you know what? Let's try this. Let's try that genre. Let's do this genre. It hits sometimes with people, and sometimes it doesn't. But he's just willing to go, I'm doing something completely different, where I think, you've got your CODs or you've got your Fortnites or you've got, those are, once they've got something, they're going to kind of stick to it to the point where it's done to death. And so it kind of leaves only the indie titles to kind of push those boundaries. Which is why I'm surprised, more people are picking it up or picking up on those areas. But you share it with indie, we'll talk about those aspects left, right, and centre. But do you think there's a slight stagnation into the AAA gaming at this current stage? Do you think it will end anytime soon, or is it just something that's just going to keep?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what. I mean, it depends on what your viewpoint is, really, because it's whether you think this stagnation really depends on how much you're enjoying AAA games at the moment. And for some people, they'll say, I'm not really enjoying them. So there is stagnation. I've not reached that point yet because I think there's enough diversity amongst AAA games that you can say, some of them are doing some really cool, interesting new things. So like Death Stranding, just to bring that up, like that is a AAA game with basically an indie sensibility. Like it's doing things that that kind of scale of game hasn't done for a while. And other games are kind of like riffing on, genres and mechanics that already exist, but trying to do them in more unique ways. But obviously, there's a I think in the AAA space that the problem, and that this isn't going to go away, is that you're more beholden to trying to make a commercially successful game. That means the level of risk that you can incur is significantly less. So you've either got to rely on kind of established genres or mechanics, or established IP, or new IPs that ape off ones that are already out there to some extent. But
so would you say it's more difficult because obviously with the indie games, they've got their own stresses and problems they have to overcome to get to them. In terms of funds, funding alone and PR is just a huge thing that they will struggle with. Versus the case of on the AAA side, they've got huge amounts of funding, huge amounts of PR, but probably even more stress from shareholders saying, well, if it doesn't sell this 60 billion, it's classified as a flop. So it's almost like extreme stresses, but from two different flip sides of the coin.
I agree. I think the thing is, in the indie space, is that first of all, indie games have become a lot more sustainable over the last 10 years. The massive part of that puzzle is the huge growth in PC gaming over time, particularly with Steam. I think Steam can be really heavily thanked, actually, for kind of making a very thriving indie scene. So there's that. Obviously, indie devs have the stresses, like of course they do, because they're often passion projects on very low budgets, or they're working significant hours. But I think the chance of reward is probably a little higher than it is in the AAA space, because AAA space is competing for so many, against so many games with comparable budgets and advertising, etc. And the stakes are sometimes a lot higher in the AAA space, I'd say, which is why you get less risk, less kind of creativity. But I think now, I think just because the audience for indie games is growing, it's still growing a lot. It just means that a lot more of them are successful, or at least a lot more ones kind of rise to the top, and they're propagated by word of mouth, and becomes this kind of virtuous cycle, almost, where one indie game is really successful, and it kind of leads to more people checking out other indie games, and then maybe a similar genre, and then they get into Steam, and then it kind of goes around the houses a bit like that. So I think it's that space is really healthy, but even then, and I don't mean this as a dunk on indie games, but you look at if you look at the last 10 years, and I know Indy's in the chat, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying. There has been a bit of a homogenization with a lot of indie games, because they, pursuing very similar genres, right? So you have a ton of roguelike games now.
It seems to be almost like trend, isn't there? There's trends.
You have a lot of that. You have increasing amounts of Metroidvanias in that space as well. So you don't have a lot of games like Outer Wilds, for example, or a lot of games like Celeste. These are kind of outliers to some extent. So even in that space, obviously, people are recognizing, well, maybe I could have more success if I went down this route, and that in its sense is not dissimilar to the same thing that's going on in the AAA space, where people go, oh, actually, open world games are really popular. Let's make an open world game. So it's not like they all kind of get funneled into this kind of, well, what's successful, but what I would say is that far and away you still get more creative ideas and concepts from the indie side of things, because they're not necessarily, sounds silly, but they're not necessarily building a game for massive commercial success. They're building a game because they want to express their creativity more, and if it becomes a mega hit, great. Or if
It's
it
a
just makes
byproduct,
enough,
isn't it? Of yeah.
or if it makes if it sells enough copies and makes enough money for them to turn a profit and to be able to continue making the games, then great. That's a very different consideration than what goes on in the AAA space.
Oh, most definitely. There's a lot of the greatest innovations come from the indie game side, and the indie game side doesn't get enough credit. Quite often what they do, a lot of the big AAA devs, they see something happen in an indie game. I'll use that in my game. So the indie games take a lot of risk because they're not afraid. Then what have they got to lose? Not a lot, because whereas they can take the risk, the AAA games play it safe, don't they, Luke? That's kind of where the innovation comes from.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Like it's just what I don't think. Like if I think about all the games I'm excited for this year, like all the AAAs, are any of them doing anything that's sort of really creatively fresh? No, not at all. They may change themselves a little bit in terms of prior incarnations, like Final Fantasy 16, for example. Like that's doing different things to old Final Fantasy games, but in the wider gaming landscape, it's not doing anything different than big AAA games. Same with Starfield, Tears of the Kingdom, all that sort of stuff. It's just so that kind of creative level hasn't moved on for a while, and it will do at some point. You always get these different games that are different, but it's a slow pace.
It definitely is.
I think VJ's gone to sleep. Or gone for a cup of tea, whichever it is.
No, I was listening, and I was just I was getting a bit tired, so I was agreeing with some stuff and some things I wasn't. But it's probably not the right time to start debating all that nonsense.
But what we need. Sorry, I was going to say what we need is more AAA games like Death Stranding. That's what we need. Just make more stuff like that. Just give Kojima more money. Let him make more games.
I'm not going to argue with it because I'm a fan of Kojima. So I'm just I've always been a fan of his work in that regard. I may not always like it, but I'm still a fan of his work. He's willing to try something new. So good on him. If it breaks the mold and something comes out of it, great. If it doesn't break the mold, he'll try something else. So it's what it's what else can you say? I'd really wish that more developers had that thought. Let's try and break something, see if it works. If it doesn't, okay, we'll try something else. But as you said, some people can't. Some aren't able to do that. So more power to him.
The problem is there's just too much risk in that when you're investing $150 million, $200 million into a game. You need it to be profitable, and unfortunately, to do that, you need to try and homogenize it as much as possible.
Well, I mean, it does tell you something. If people are, he's well known in the industry. He has had numerous large amounts of successes, and if he's still struggling to get people to back some of his games, that should tell you something, should it?
No, it's not. I think it just comes down to basic economics at the end of the day.
I think that's. I think the difference with Kojima is that he's established like a brand, as it were.
He's got a base community he's got a base community and following that for whom he can do no wrong, right? So guaranteed, because that he's going to put out a semblance of a game that can work, that's visually top end, will have decent mechanics, and will have a story that perhaps some or maybe no one can follow, but is intriguing none the same. And his technology is cutting edge. and as Luke just pointed out, he's got a brand, right?
He definitely has. Yeah.
And then it just becomes a matter of economics for publishers, and it's not surprising that at the moment the only two companies that seemingly that we know of publicly that are partaking or entertaining his approach to game design and innovation are platform holders, because perhaps none of the others can afford to do it. And I saw someone in the chat say that Kojima was kicked out of Konami. That's not true. So he's a very difficult guy to work with, and he's not not the. He can be charming in terms of how he comes across publicly, but in terms of how he is as a person, it sometimes can leave a lot to be desired.
He's an artiste, isn't it? An artist.
And as much as he's revered in the gaming community, let's just say there are a few people that are with him constantly or continuously on his journey that perhaps if they weren't with him, he may not have reached the standing that he currently has within the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, some of those people are with him, and some of them are unsung heroes. But it's because games aren't just made by one person. You can ask Miyazaki for that matter. Because he often talks about his team. Whenever he gets an award, he talks about his team.
That's the first thing he does, isn't it? That's one thing I must do.
I don't hear Kojima say that much about his team or praise them as much as some of the other creators do, like Cory Barlog, or even Neil Druckmann for that matter. So that should tell you something about that. And Konami can afford to fund Kojima's games, but they chose not to, and not for the reasons that people think publicly, because again, that's just propagated bullshit at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, like Kojima, if you look at, it's a good point, but like, tied to the success of Kojima is probably, someone like Yoji Shinkawa, who is, his artist effectively, right? He was, the guy that if you think about kind of Metal Gear Solid's art and the drawings and the kind of, intricate details and that sort of stuff, and the same with Death Stranding, like that's the art you're looking at, and he's been with Kojima since the early days, and actually is kind of fundamental to the look and feel of all of Kojima's games. So, it's a good point. I guess Kojima's just at that level in the industry where he's
a very strong brand.
Yeah, he's an auteur, right? So, and that's really rare in any medium. You only have a few of them that people would class as that in film, and even less of them in games, right? He's just kind of got to that level where he's seen as a creative visionary in his field, and therefore it doesn't really matter what budget he's on. Some, publishers will want to work with him because his games can be commercially successful, even if they're creatively
unique,
and unique. So,
some of these publishers, some of their games, they may think, oh, hang on a minute, they may just sell by being
his name only,
associated with his name only, and he's been around in the industry for a long time, like many creators, but unlike, there's been some fantastic. I still think Kevin Levine, is a fantastic.
Yeah,
creator.
probably another author. Yeah,
but for him, the difficulty is that it's just very difficult to manage him, right? And he's very super intense. I read quite a lot of his interviews and stuff like that, and Take-Two or was it Rockstar at the time? I can't remember. Or was it they had another gathering of developers. I can't remember what umbrella he was under or brand label he was under at Take-Two, but but BioShock was really different at the time for me anyway, right? And I'm really looking forward to his new game Judas, to be honest with you.
Well, it is notorious that some creative types are most definitely difficult to work with, and as you said, it's then some can be managed and some cannot. And I think, as you rightly said, some teams help the people move forward, and some teams will work with someone, and just that will never work with again. One thing I will say is though, with Kojima's, obviously I can't use his name, the artist that was mentioned previously that works for Kojima for years and years and years. I'm sure I did remember actually reading an interview many moons ago where I think he said actually he preferred to be out of the limelight. So he was actually one of those people where he didn't mind the fact that Kojima was pretty much full show in everything, because it was just basically for him, it was like, I don't want to deal with that. I want my art. I want to do it that way. I want it based on it. I want a paycheck at the end of it, but also still, but keep out of that limelight. Well, I think Kojima, we're just following him on Twitter. He loves that. He loves the limelight. It's one of those things I think gets him forward a little bit. Which, for good or bad, can be useful.
Removable, I would say that Nintendo, I know it's one of AAA games don't innovate, but maybe I don't play enough video games yet. But I beg to differ when it comes to Nintendo, especially with Mario Galaxy, and then the Mario Odyssey, and then with Zelda Breath of the Wild, and a few bits and pieces that we've been treated to in terms of Tears of the Kingdom. They always surprise. I know their games take a hell of a long time to make, but they don't have super duper recognized superstars other than Miyamoto, right?
And I think but
they do innovate. And I think it's just publishers get caught in the loop. Like, I remember I was there when Assassin's Creed was first announced, and so forth, and it's not like working with a formula, and then expanding the game based on the new hardware that becomes available every so often. It still makes them money, right?
I will say 100% agree with you, Nintendo. I kind of ironically put them out of my head for some strange reason when I made that statement. Yes, I kind of walked back my statement slightly on that, because you're right. Nintendo do. Well, no, it's one of those things. It's just one of those things that even my brain just.
Yeah, I don't blame you for Removable.
I've forgotten about it.
Because what you're saying, there is a truth to what you're saying, because it's so commonplace. That's the thing, right? And it's almost like the norm. And then there are a few exceptions to the rule, and it's those exceptions to the rule that sometimes we forget about, because there's so many games on the format we're dedicated to, right, that we forget that those others even exist. So I completely understand, right? There's just so much information out there. No one's expected to know everything all of the time. But Nintendo is definitely one, and I think Luke was talking about Final Fantasy 16. I don't know if it was on a show or something like that, or Stubbs might have said to me, in terms of, that is going to be a break from the norm, especially in terms of the team that is on it, the pedigree that they have, the style of game that they worked on previously, and especially in the fact that they seem to have bypassed a lot of what Final Fantasy 7 did in terms of its mechanics. So it's going to be really interesting to see, because I haven't played Final Fantasy 14, but my nephew plays it and his friends play it religiously and paid the $15-20 a month. And so I'm really looking forward to it. And Final Fantasy 7, the remake combat system, I've talked to you about it. I thought it was fantastic, innovated. And talking of innovation, even Dragon Quest 12, which I'm really looking forward to, is changing up I know it was only like a 2-minute interview. They showed the logo and they said, what can you tell? They said, look, one of the things we can tell, this is about a year and a half ago, is that we are totally redesigning in terms of how the combat system will work to more of a real-time gameplay system. And people were a bit perturbed by it because they don't know what the hell that means. And I don't know what it means, but innovation at some point has to come. And I know you guys may or may not remember, back in the 90s, all video games that you loved from the 90s all were developed pretty much with the spirit and the know-how and the approach which indie games take today. So it's not something new; it's just something that was prevalent, or in the early 90s and even during the 80s. I'm not that old, but I can't remember anything before that. Rather than the Space Invaders,
late 70s.
Yeah, but innovation and the way that those AAA games at the time for Mega Drive, Atari ST, Amiga, whatever you want to call it, forgive me if I'm missing out your favorite system, but
Spectrum.
but the approach in terms of how those games were made,
Yep.
especially at who was the guy, Peter Molyneux's studio before he was acquired by Microsoft? I forgot what it was called, but their approach was pretty much Lionhead, yeah. Their I think it was Lionhead, yeah. Their approach to making video game after launching a video game, their approach to making the next video game was pretty much the approach that indie game developers take today. So it's interesting to see. I think we talked about this before, and it's all come full circle. It's just that you just have to look at the movie industry, like how independent movies are made versus tentpole movies, because they've got such a huge company to support, right, in terms of revenues, right? They've got to go for these tentpole movies. They've just put themselves in that position. This is what we talked about. We talked about Elden Ring in terms of its commercial revenues compared to some of the other games that they make. But I think you're right, Removable, that because of Miyazaki's standing in the industry and From Software, he can pretty much say, look, this is the game I'm making. I couldn't care less whether it's going to sell 5 million, 3 million, or 50 million. This is my vision, and this is what everybody in the studio is buying into. So we're going to make that, right?
I think it's one of those things. We do need more artistic creators into the space, into the AAA space. I think we do need those. Maybe slightly harder to work with individuals, but still who have that amazing creativity.
The games industry doesn't want that. They're moving away from that.
I'll tell you what it is, and I've talked about this before. Look, you've got your vision holders like Kojima and all, etc., Miyamoto and all that guys, right? That's all fine, right? And then you've got the publisher with all the money, right? And I've said this before on Boom Show, and they say, oh, why is 343 not working? Why is that not working? Bonnie's this, and Clive that, and Mike this, and blah, 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 throwing mud and slinging mud. I'll tell you now, and I've said it before, but bar the actual development team, where gameplay programmers are really key, is that one of the most difficult things to find is the glue that holds the whole studio together.
You have said that, yeah. You said that about the initiative.
The producer, and you can see now, right? Even in Japan, when you go to press conferences for video games and something, the director of the game doesn't really come out as the main one holding the can. It's always a producer, and it's starting to happen here in the US as well, because they are the glue. They are the ones that manage these difficult personalities, etc., etc. And that is a really in demand skill. And you've seen EA fall foul many times with some of their game releases, right? Because their answer to saying, well, instead of having one really fantastic producer, we'll put 6 people on it, so they can so we won't miss anything. But they still do, because the nurturing of a really good executive producer, someone that's really pragmatic, is creative, understands production, understands every single shareholder that's involved in the game, whether you're the designer, the creator, the publisher, or the investor, the marketing, whatever. He has all the shareholders, has the understanding of every aspect of the business, of a publisher developer relationship, right? And he manages it well. And at the end of the day, it's down to them to produce, make sure that the game is produced relatively on budget, on time, and to the quality. And as we're all talking about, innovation.
Well, it's absolutely nightmare. Micromanaging not only difficult personalities, the wants and needs of the shareholders, and ensuring that the team itself is hitting targets. It's no easy task, and so that's why they're paid the big bucks, but also why they're hard to find, because to do it well and to do it successfully for so many years, it's a talent that's, I wouldn't say it's been lost, but it's a talent that's in high demand. And once they've got someone who's really good, they're going to pay them whatever they want to keep them there, because as you said, it's not an easy job. And we kind of forget that on the kind of gaming side. We see effectively the glorified image of how things are developed and produced. We don't see the nitty gritty of it. And those people we probably don't see much more. We don't see a lot of them in terms of in the public eye, and for a probably very good reason, because they're probably they're the head honcho quite a bit.
Yeah, probably they probably don't want publishers probably don't want their top guys being
Exactly. They don't want them kind of in the PR.
I get that. I remember when I used to meet lots and lots of developers in Japan, and it would always be the producer. Everyone remembers these fantastic guys and this and that and the other, but a production role. I think the other thing is they're not nurtured enough within big publishers, and I don't even know if they are today. But I'm with you, Removable. I think it's an underrated quality and an underrated skill set, which can make or break a game in my experience, right? As well. So I would definitely, because those guys can bring the whole team on side and even take them offside, even unknowingly. So they've got to, and these games, whether it's an indie game, just look at Silksong, or whether it's a AAA game, it's a lot of time needed, right, to be dedicated to that, something like that, and you need the stamina for it.
Yep.
Yeah, and you need to be consistent, just like Luke is, right, in his job.
100%. He's gone quiet now.
Just kidding, Luke. Just kidding.
But no, there's been some excellent points. It's been a great gaming conversation it has tonight. But I'm going to have to wrap it up there because it's getting a bit late now.
You mean
what's his bedtime pizza?
I bored you to tears. Yeah, I bored you to tears.
No, it's very fascinating listening to the debates from Luke, Removable, and yourself, VJ, on this gaming topic, as in indies to AAAs. It is a very good topic, and especially when I mentioned the likes of Kojima's and that, you had some very good opinions on it. You did. It's because we could the topic we're on at the minute. We probably could go 2 to 4 hours. You know what I mean?
With that, too easy.
But I've got to wrap it up somewhere. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Luke. It's been great to get your insight on gaming and the MMA of ABK. Hopefully, eventually, it'll all be over soon, and then you can, and the whole gaming world can shut up about it. Either way,
Yeah.
they can.
Then I can move on.
You can.
Move on to the next one.
Yes. Yeah. No, I've got. I'll just stick to it with my job. I think I'll do M&A there. That's
you sure you don't want to go in full time and literally start doing interviews and
Yeah, maybe.
I think he's going to speak to the higher ups at his company and say, look, we need to do an M&A with the developers of Outer Wilds.
Oh, I'd love that.
He would.
Yeah, I'd be very passionate about that. Yeah,
you'd fight that corner, wouldn't you?
You could just imagine Russell going, Outer Wilds, is this some sort of perfume?
I might just reach out. It's funny actually. The place I was prior, we did some gaming ones, which I can't say obviously.
NDA.
But I remember we'd kind of get wind of something coming down the pipe, and people would be like, "Oh yeah, I've got some capacity, so I could probably deal with it." And I heard this particular one, and I was literally like, "I'll do it." Like,
I'll do it.
I really want to do that. And they were like, "Why?" And I explained who these people were and stuff, and they were like, "Yeah, I don't get it, but you can do it. Cool.
Yeah, whatever. Go on, just do that.
Whatever."
Weirdo.
And it was like one of my favorite files, because I got a chance to work, with clients that I knew a lot about because of what they did. So that was great. So yeah, whenever those happen, it's
you
always,
didn't fanboy them
really
when you
fun.
first met them. Tell me you didn't fanboy.
No, I didn't fanboy.
I really like your games. Yeah.
That was something to do with Barry Manilow, was it?
No. I mean, he's the dream. Yeah, he's the dream, but maybe one day. But no, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it and really enjoyed it. So yes, thank you to VJ and Removable Sanity as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Much appreciated, matey. It's always good to have you on here. Let's hope we can try and get you on here again. maybe not that sort of conversation. We'll try and divert it into the weird territory
Talk
again.
about games. Yeah.
Yeah, that strange thing. No one plays anymore, you know.
Exactly. Thanks for coming back on, Removable. It's good to
Much
have you on.
appreciate having it. Yeah. I'm glad that, you know, I was a bit quiet today because clearly there was a topic that we wanted to discuss.
Well, you were with that topic, but after that, you opened up. Had I not cut the podcast down, I reckon we would still be here till 2 a.m. probably.
You know, I don't stop. Yes, this is true. But again, no, much appreciated for obviously having me on. It's great to see, just, you know, chat to VJ. I talk to him on a regular. Obviously yourself, I understand. And of course, I don't get as much chance to speak to you, but it's clearly great to have him on and have a chat with him regardless. You know, I'll have him on regardless, you know.
Yeah, thanks. And VJ, thanks for coming on. Did you manage to get that cup of tea, or were you too busy
I didn't know. I was. It's nice to have Luke on because he just comes from left field and different from everybody else, and so we get to learn a lot and listen a lot. And then he just manages to spark thoughts in our conversation agenda and takes things off on a tangent, which is always interesting, right? So I appreciate him coming on. Thanks, Luke. And
no worries at all.
And with Removable, yeah, when we chat, it is actually only about games. We don't really talk about anything else.
It's true. Well, maybe food. We do talk about your food.
Well, food as well, yeah. Food and the game we're actually playing, we talk about and analyze it and stuff. So, which I find really interesting. We had somebody join our conversation randomly the other day, and he was with us for 5 minutes. Then, when he heard the conversation we were having, even though he wanted to steer it somewhere else, he left. He just clocked off. So that was good, and I'll be back on next time if you have me, as long as you promise not to discuss that subject.
We're not going to discuss it unless in 2 weeks' time the results and it's all over. Then it'll be different.
End of April, isn't it?
And there'll be even less reason to discuss it, unless Luke wants to.
Exactly.
Yeah, if in 2 weeks' time it all happens, Luke could be like, right, okay, get me on for one last time. One
last rodeo.
End of April, so no, it's not. It won't be then.
Oh, I'm sure that won't stop some people from talking about it.
God, no.
I was going to say, I'm just sure this power cut that indie gamer is experiencing in his area, someone's doing a bank heist. It's got to be. I mean, what else is it?
I tell you what,
it's not. It's
He's just messaging us because that's his
timestamps. Some of the timestamps, and you've got to hear some of the Hollow Knight slander and Hollow Knight's Silk Song's not coming out this year. There's all sorts.
Yeah, he's been.
When he left.
Luke's been giving Team Cherry a hard time, Indy, and I didn't know what. I was just speechless, really. I didn't know what to do.
I didn't talk for 45 minutes. That tells you something.
It's true.
just me lambasting Team Cherry.
Yeah, more like sour cherry.
Well, you'll have to get VJ back on the Indie Games podcast then. Talk to discuss some Hornet. You will.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Hollow Knight. I can't even believe I didn't even know that when Indy was telling me, "Oh, did you get what percentage did you get?" You must have got over 100. 100? What do you mean over 100%? And then he explained, that it goes up to 111 or whatever. And they take a lot of inspiration. They do from Harry Potter books as well. If you're interested, then I bet maybe that's a subject for another time.
But yeah, no, thanks for coming on, VJ. It's been a fun show. It has. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you are, please leave a review and subscribe on that platform. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. But thanks everyone for tuning in chat. I much appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Have a good night, everyone. A good day.
Bye-bye.
Wherever you are. Thanks. And see you. Bye.